of our state and of our country. I also extend my hearty welcome to all the senior teachers, young teachers, scholars, and students of philosophy and the lovers of philosophy for being connected with this virtual academic platform of philosophy family. Friends, it's an honor and a pride privilege for all of us to offer a hearty welcome to this webinar in the post-pandemic time. Friends, today our great teacher and teacher of teachers, Professor P.K. Mohapatra sir, has honored us by agreeing with us to address the today's webinar on the theme Indian culture. We are most grateful to Professor. We are indebted to him for his participation and moral support to all of us. And his participation and moral support has gained the has increased the moral strength of the members of philosophy family, and we have been encouraged to organize more and more number of webinars to reach the unreached during the pandemics and the post-pandemic times. Hence, the pandemic corona has made us frightened. It has created economic crisis, health hazards, and crisis in life in uh, professional career, and it has given us a stress and strain in each walk of our life. But still, it has developed the creativity in us. We, the Indians, have cultivated moral strength to fight with Corona during this crucial time. And during this crucial time, we have invited our teacher, Professor Prafulla Kumar Mohapatra sir, to reflect upon the essential features of Indian culture, which will help us to face any kind of pandemics and problems of our life. Now, before his talk, let me speak a few words on his academic career and professional excellence. Uh, now, Professor Dr. Prafulla Kumar Mohapatra sir has is very popular to all of us. Sir was the former professor and head PG Department of Philosophy in Utkal University. He was also the National Fellow in Indian Council of Philosophical Research, New Delhi. And if we go to his academic career, we can see that Professor has obtained gold medal both in BA and MA. He did his BA from Rebensha College. Now it is treated as Rebensha University. And he was the first class first in BA in 1964, and he obtained his MA degree in 1966, and in MA class he also obtained first class pass and achieved university gold medal. Our sir obtained his PhD degree from University of Kiel, England in 1977. And reflecting upon his work experience, he worked as a lecturer in Utkal University in the PG Department of Philosophy from 1967 to 1984. He also worked as a reader from 1984 to 1999. He promoted to professor and worked as professor and head from the year 1990 to 2002 for 12 years. Professor P.K. Mohapatra sir was also working as a coordinator, Department of Special Assistant in Philosophy, Utkal University during 1992 and 2002. He was also the general editor Utkal Studies in Philosophy series a publication for a couple of years, perhaps 10 years. He was also the editor of Indian Journal of Analytic Philosophy for a couple of years. And Sir has a specialization in many topics: Western analytic philosophy, philosophy of mind, philosophy of values, moral philosophy, and practical ethics. For this, he has also gained popularity across the country. And if we reflect upon his distinctions, we can see that he obtained, as I have already reflected upon, he gained Utkal University uh, gold medal for standing first class pass, both in BA and MA. He obtained Commonwealth scholarship to go to England, and he also got Fulbright visiting professorship in the United States in the year 1989. He was also working as a visiting professor in Western Michigan University, USA in 1996 and 1999. Brook University, Canada in the year 1996. Ohio State University in the year 1999. For this, we are indebted to him because he's a rare professor in our state who has gone such kind of honor outside our country. And a professor P.K. Mohapatra sir was the ICPR National Fellow during 2013 to 2015. He also got UGC Emeritus Fellowship from 2010 to 2012. He was also working as ICPR Senior Fellow from 2002 to 2004. To his credits, Professor P.K. Mohapatra was the life member Indian Philosophy Congress, Vice Chairman of IPC in 1991 to 1994. He was also the President of All Orissa Philosophy Association from 1997 to 2017. Now he is acting as advisor AOPA from 2017 onwards. We can also reflect upon some of his publications. Uh, they are an applied perspective on Indian ethics, 2019. It was published by Springer Helberg and Singapore. His book, Society, Culture and Value, has gained popularity. His book, Bhinna Drushti in Odia language, is very popular among the Odia scholars and teachers of philosophy. He has also authored Ethics and Society, an essay in applied ethics in 2008. He has also written concepts and problems, essays on man, mind, and metaphysics. Uh, he has edited different books that I don't want to reflect upon all the things because of the positive time. Still, then I can recite the name, some of the books: Action, Freedom, and Responsibility, God, Time, and Evil, Perspective in Analytic Philosophy, and many more things. Professor P.K. Mohapatra has obtained many awards and felicitation from different organizations that I don't want to reflect upon all the things because it's our honor to have him with this webinar in a small philosophy family, and we are also honored to have him among us, among the scholars of philosophy in this academic platform. Today, I welcome Professor Prafulla Kumar Mohapatra sir to our webinar to speak on the topic Indian culture. Today, I can also recite the name of our Armini, our host, our convener, Sri Pramod Kumar Das, who has arranged everything. with the with the person behind all kinds of success of philosophy family. I welcome him to this webinar. Today, he will reflect upon the talk of Professor Mohapatra sir as a synopsis, as a mark of synopsis. Today, we have with us our friend Dr. K. Omnaran Rao. He will interact. He will moderate the interactive session. I also welcome him, and with this, I once again bow down my head before all the senior teachers of our state and our country to be connected with us, to have moral support for this program. Once again, I welcome all of you, and I request our teacher and teacher of teacher, Professor, to commence his speech. Over to Professor Mahapatra sir. Pranam sir.
Thank you, and good evening to everybody. It was a long introduction. Anyway, thank you for all that. I would straight away present my views on what I think to be the proper understanding of our culture. We are proud of our culture, but there have been many things in our general understanding of the culture which
you are out of focus. ଆପଣ ମଝିକି ଟିକେ ଆଉ ଟିକେ
ନାଇଁ ମାନେ ଦେଖା ଯାଉନି ନା ଶୁଣା ଯାଉନି?
ହଁ ଦେଖା ଯାଉନି, ଆପଣ ଫେସ ର ହାଫ ଦେଖା ଯାଉଛି ଆଉ ଫାଷ୍ଟ ଦେଖା ଯାଉନି, ତା ଟିକେ ମଝିକି ଆସନ୍ତୁ, ଟିକେ ବୁଲେଇ ଯାଉଛୁ। ହଁ
ଆଚ୍ଛା ମୁଁ ଟିକେ ଦେଖ ସରୁ ଏମିତି।
ହଁ ହଁ ହଁ
ହେଲା ତ?
ଆଉ ଟିକେ ଆଉ ଟିକେ
ଶୁଣା ଯାଉଛି ଠିକ?
ହଁ ଏକଦମ ବଢିଆ ଶୁଣା ଯାଉଛି, ଏବେ ମଧ୍ୟ ଭଲ ଦେଖା ହେଲା, କିନ୍ତୁ ଖାଲି ଫେସ ଟା ଟିକେ ସାଇଡ ହେଇଥିଲା।
Thank you.
Again, come back to side. ଆଉ ଟିକେ ମଝିକି ଆସନ୍ତୁ,
ଆଉ ଟିକେ ମଝିକି ଯିବି,
ଆଉ ଟିକେ ଲେଫ୍ଟ କୁ ଆସନ୍ତୁ, ଲେଫ୍ଟ କୁ ଆଉ ଟିକେ, ହଁ ହଁ ହଁ
ଏଇଟା ହେଇଗଲା।
ହଁ ହଁ
ଆଚ୍ଛା
ହଉଛି
ସବୁ ଆଚ୍ଛା ସେ ଆଇପ୍ୟାଡ ରେ ଏମିତି ହଉଛି ବୋଧେ। All right, now it's all right. Audible or not clearly?
You are audible. You are also visible. So please proceed.
Okay, thank you.
ଆଜ୍ଞା ସମସ୍ତଙ୍କୁ ନମସ୍କାର, ବଡ ଭାଇ ମାନଙ୍କୁ ନମସ୍କାର।
କିଏ କହୁଛନ୍ତି?
ମୁଁ ହରିଶ ମିଶ୍ର ଆଜ୍ଞା, ବସ୍ ଷ୍ଟାଣ୍ଡ ଆଉଟର ଗେଟ୍ ସର୍ବୋଦୟ ନଗର ପୁରୀରୁ କହୁଛି।
ଆଜ୍ଞା
ଆଉ ଗୁରୁଜନ ମାନଙ୍କୁ ନମସ୍କାର ଆଜ୍ଞା,
ନମସ୍କାର।
ଲଘୁଜନ ମାନଙ୍କୁ ଆଶୀର୍ବାଦ। ସାର୍ ପ୍ଲିଜ ଷ୍ଟାର୍ଟ କରନ୍ତୁ, ଆମେ ଆନ୍ସିୟସଲି ୱେଟ୍ କରିଛୁ।
ଓକେ, ଥ୍ୟାଙ୍କ ୟୁ ଭେରି ମଚ୍। ଆମର ଆଉ ଜଣେ ହରିଶ ବାବୁ ଅଛନ୍ତି ତ, ସେ ଦି ଜଣ ଟିକେ ଢୋଡା ହେଇଛି। Anyway, there has been a very general impression, very familiar general impression about Indian culture. That Indian mind is predominantly mystical, spiritual, that Indian philosophy is pessimistic, otherworldly, life negating, and things like that. Now, why this impression has taken the form of a stereotype, and this has been raised by some Orientalists and Western scholars, and it has been also made familiar by several Indian scholars too. This familiarity or general acceptance of this theory, general idea about our culture, has been because of the fact that many scholars, including Indian scholars, have projected Indians by saying that Indians care not for this life, but for a life beyond, where they get the real liberation. So Indians care about all kinds of liberation, moksha, nirvana, and also the Indian mind is always about that. Now that is something which has made many philosophers, abroad, to come to the conclusion that there was no philosophy or philosophical theory in India. I will come to that point just a little while. But viewed in this kind of general way, Indian mind or Indian culture, Indian tradition has appeared to have three general features. One is there, one is universality, which includes monism and absolutism, or monistic and absolutistic dispositions. The second feature or second apparent feature of this culture has been metaphysicality, which includes religiosity, spirituality, and otherworldliness. And the third feature, which is a very typical of Indian way of speaking and thinking, is what I call negativity. By this I mean that we have a general tendency of abstaining from any positive characterization of reality. And that is why we have the concepts like asteya, non-stealing, avoidam, non-enmity, aparigraha, ahimsa. Now all these things we have appeared to us to be more positive values or positive virtues. This is what I call negativity. Negativity is not negative attitude, but abstaining from positive description of reality. Now, let me say a little in detail about these three features, these three apparent features of Indian culture. Universality first. We are in our philosophy and culture has this tendency of emphasizing or giving importance to the absolute, to the universal, and to the abstract. The particular things and the particular beings, which are objects of sense and experience, are described as either unreal or not of much consequence, maya or holika. This proneness for absolutism and universalism, or absolute and the universal, absolute and the abstract, it has become so much ingrained in our mind and thought that it is reflected in our thought and language. For example, very often we like to speak adjectively, and the particular things which are signified by noun words, are said to be real, if at all, as long as it is considered as an instance of the universal. Very much like the Platonic theory of universals, where the particulars or particular things and beings, the world of particulars, is said to be an instantiating the world of universals. So that whatever reality we think this world has, world of particulars, is because of the fact that it participates in the world of universals. We have been teaching this Greek philosophy to our students, and we have been studying about this for years. So very much like the Platonic theory of particulars. The particular things, individuals and things and beings, they are supposed to be dependent on the universals. Now, coming to the second apparent feature, metaphysicality. This is where we have a great reverence for metaphysical for the metaphysical, and that idea of metaphysics includes religiosity, spirituality, and otherworldliness. Now, religiosity of these three, religiosity has taken the center stage. So much so that it has been very difficult to discern philosophy and religion. As a result of that, as I mentioned a little earlier, that several philosophers have come to think that there was no philosophy in India, it was all religion, all spirituality. Everybody knows W.T. Stace was very critical about that, and this view was also reflected by Martin Heidegger, that there was no philosophical theory or philosophy as a theory in India. Now, this is something which we have to bear with because of our overemphasis on the metaphysical, on religiosity. Now, religiosity, spirituality, and otherworldliness. All these three presuppose or lead to a belief in transcendence. So that we are in the habit of a transcendent world, which is more important. And this kind of idea, the idea of transcendence, has been reflected also in our thought and language habits. And particularly, our attitude, Indians' attitude towards death, is a kind of evidence of that. Megasthenes, for example, Megasthenes, the Greek traveler, he has said that life in this world, in India, according to the Indians, life in this world is comparable to the quivering of a baby in the mother's womb in order to take birth. And life begins verily at the moment of death in this world. So the real life begins after death. Now, this kind of attitude he has marked, and actually we give more importance to the other world in this sense, to transcendence. And then coming to the idea negativity. as I said, this means that we are in the habit of abstaining from any positive attribution. Just as transcendence had the idea of transcendence or transcendent world has characterized all the different categories like life, truth, and reality. Similarly, reality has been always, we tend to describe the real not in a straightforward positive statement, but in terms of negative statements. I gave you the examples. Apart from this avoida, ahimsa, and aparigraha, etc., I think the idea of niskama karma also, to some extent, is influenced by this idea of a negative. And we have, for example, abhava. In Vaiseshika, we have a category, abhava, which is which is considered to be a positive category. Abhava is a positive category. And we have this Syadvada, Jaina Syadvada. It has a lot of merit, no doubt, but it reflects this tendency, general tendency to describe things not in a positive way, but in a tentatively negative way. Syadvada. Syad asti, syad nasti, you know that. You can't describe probabilities. You can't describe the reality. You don't want to describe the reality. But maybe for some good reasons that we can have other occasions to discuss. But this is the tendency that Jaina Syadvada is also a kind of reflection of this negativistic tendency. And then we have also Sunya, Shunyata. Sunyavada is a respectable theory in Buddhism. So these are, generally speaking, they appear to be, because of this stereotypical general impression that we have about Indian culture, these three features seems to be, I say they are apparent features because otherwise they have been taken by many to be the real features of Indian culture and Indian tradition. Why do I say that they are apparent? Because we cannot say they cannot, all these three, universality, metaphysicality, and negativity. Where the negativity also has another thing. We describe our reality in terms of neti, not this, not this, not this. Maybe it is because of the fact that Spinoza said something to the effect that if you want to describe something, you will limit it. Omni determinatio ab negatio est. So maybe it's because of that. The reasons are there. But this negativity is evidently visible in our attitude and our approach to anything that is real and knowable. Why do I say that they are apparent features? Because they cannot be the logically necessary features of all aspects of Indian culture. Because we have in our philosophy several systems, beginning with Charvaka, that they do not have much interest in the absolute and the universal or the abstract. We have also the Vaisheshika philosophy gets its name from its main concept of Vishesha, which is unique particular. Every individual is uniquely in a unique particular and distinct from the other universal. Something like the identity of indiscernible, which Leibniz talked about. But in Vaisheshika, therefore, there is no flair for absolutism and universality. We have our Sankhya pluralists. Sankhya pluralists, they do not take monism seriously. Because they were pluralists. So many teachers. And then we have, again, Charvaka and Buddhism, where there is no interest in the metaphysics, particularly in Buddhism. We are all aware of Buddha's silence on metaphysical questions. He refused to answer metaphysical questions. You are all familiar with this, I don't have to elaborate on that. He refused to answer metaphysical questions because he thought that these questions are of no consequence so far as life here is concerned. Now, life here and now was boring. Therefore, metaphysicality also cannot be taken as a real feature or logically necessary feature of our culture, tradition. Now, why then? We have also a tendency to look for the essence. Look for essence. And the idea of the jiva is that essence that we are looking for. But this jiva, individual jiva, cannot be real unless it is thought as identical or as related in a very crucial way to the universal self. So these are the things which we have been thinking about our culture. Then, if these are the instances which I have cited, where metaphysicality, universality, generality, and abstract are not stressed, then why it is at all that we have been thinking about these features as the general feature of our culture? The reason I think is the lack of an authentic, comprehensive history of our culture, with proper emphasis on mathematics, economics, medicine, astronomy, in which our Indian scholars did have some significant contributions. If Kautilya, Brahmagupta, Varahamira, Charaka, and Vachayana had gained as much attention as Shankara, Buddha, and the authors of the Upanishads from competent scholars, then the picture of India, the picture of Indian culture, picture of Indian tradition would have been definitely different. Now this how and I it seems very um, well unnatural to brand India as spiritual and other countries as material. This branding of the dichotomy of Indian spiritual India and material West and other countries seems to be very unusual. Isn't it amazing? Why amazing? It is amusing. Because you see countries which have produced great scholars, great metaphysicians, great spiritualists like Schopenhauer, like Saint Thomas Aquinas, like Saint John of the Cross. Countries which have been the homeland of Taoism and Zen Buddhism, can they be said to be less spiritual than India? This is one. And if we consider the works of Leo Tolstoy and Dostoevsky and others, then at least people will come to realize that the erstwhile Soviet Russia, which was considered as predominantly atheist and even by some as barbarians, they have been also championing the cause of spirituality as a respectable moral virtue. So you see, in the branding, then you come to the idea that human mind, human thinking is always uniform throughout the world. So, like empirical experience, the mystical experience and the metaphysical experiences do have common features, do have a lot of common features, which cannot allow the branding of them as either spiritual or spiritual only or material only. Because this is human thinking is like that. Human mind is thinking like that. We do have common features. So you can't say that India only had this. India also had practical approach to life. Buddha was very much alive to the fact. This is not the case that Indian culture, Indian tradition always considered this life as something which is full of sorrows and sufferings. Something which should be escaped. So that you can go and get your real liberation in another world. It is not there. Yes, Buddha was responsible, primarily responsible for the suffering of him. He said, Sarvam Dukkam. But then he never, because of that, he never preached pessimism. He said that there is suffering and there is cause of suffering and there is cessation of suffering by dealing appropriately with the cause of suffering. Conquer, defeat and conquer suffering. Don't just run away from it. That was Buddha's. And therefore, even in Buddhism, pessimism was not there. Even in Buddhism, which is famously known for their suffering doctrine, pessimism is not real. Always that is the um, you know what are the called? The Four Noble Truths are as much important in Buddhism as the Sila, the codes of conduct. Buddhism was a very important philosophy in that sense that even without an explicit or belief in God and the transcendental, without belief in the other world, it became a major religion of the world because of its emphasis on morality. The greatest contribution of Buddhist philosophy was Buddhist philosophy contribution to the world of culture and civilization was what I call primacy of the ethical. Primacy of the ethical was the most important thing in Buddhist philosophy. And then coming to his idea of morality, he famously recommended for a middle path. Why? Because ethics has to be applied in life. Because that is the spirit of ethics. That is what ethics is meant for. Ethics is meant to guide us in our life. Therefore, it must apply to life. Life of what? Life of common man. Ethics is not. Ethical standards, the rigorous ethical standards, of course, have been prescribed for us. But Buddha never wanted these ethical theories to be too abstract and too rigorous, because that cannot be followed by, that cannot be emulated by the common. Ethics is always for the common. It is not for the servants or the rishis or the saints. Those people, of course, they formulated these rigorous theories, and they were men of strongest moral character. So they can afford the luxury of the absolutist theories of ethics, not the common. Buddha said if you build a road on which the extremely study only can work, then that road would be of no use. Similarly, likewise, if you prescribe principles, moral principles, which no common man can be able to work, able to follow, then this is also of no use. The rishis, the saints, men of strongest moral character, they have prescribed this thing, but they can afford the luxury of this absolutist theories, but we cannot. In the austerity of moral absolutism, where only angels revel, mortals are likely to fall. And in the fact of occasional failures in morality, occasional moral failures, lies all that goes to the making of the concept of freedom and moral comfort. If there would be people in the world who would not do anything wrong, then the question of being morally praised or blamed would not arise. And anyone who cannot just do anything wrong is outside the moral scale. Therefore, Buddha believed that ethics and morality are meant for the common man, not for the liberated souls. I mean, the saints and so on, they are like liberated souls to whom the category of good or bad, right and wrong, and moral and immoral, they will not apply. Like the Chandogya Upanishad said, like the drop of water that does not stick to the lotus leaf. Similarly, these Jivanmukta or servants of saints, to them, morality, immorality will not touch. They are above. Yes, they will be there to guide us. But for them to follow the principles, to be moral principles, doesn't arise. Therefore, Buddha said that there should be a middle. And middle path is the philosophical mean between moral absolutism and the common man. Because common man has to has to do with ethics. Ethics is always is relevant in a society. A society of normal. The common man means, I mean, common man with a normal intention. In a sense, Rajendra Prasad said a very interesting thing. It may not be very, it may be controversial, but he said something like this: that the absolute moral theory cannot be called normative ethical theories, because their standards fly far away from the norm. He said normative and normal, they have one common root, norm. So that means ethics must be dealing with what ought to be and what is, what ought to be done and what is done. That is how it will apply. It can be emulated by men of normal moral integrity. Now, therefore, this is what Rajendra Prasad said. I am not going to insist on that, but what he has also pointed out, brought our attention to, is that ethics is meant for the common man. Ethics is meant for the common man with normal moral intuitions or moral sense. Therefore, Buddha was alive to this fact. Otherwise, if you say that no moral standards must be absolutely inviolable, then that would be a difficult thing to be applied in practice. Because if you apply these absolute theories or absolutist theories, or if you follow the ethical theories as absolutely inviolable, either they will be inapplicable or they will lead to undesirable or even disastrous consequences when applied without qualification. There are many instances. Truth telling, you must speak the truth. If you speak the truth always without any exception, then you can't apply this to the life, because sometimes it may lead to consequences which are undesirable. So sometimes you have to tell the truth. In our Mahabharata, there have been 5 different situations where this idea of truth telling may be violated. But when a marriage is being when two consenting couples are making law, when the someone's sarvasva is in the danger of being snatched away, and when the life of a Brahmin is in danger. I should say when the life, somebody's life is in danger. In all these distinct cases, you can make exceptions to the Putra. That is why we have the concept of apadharma to deal with or to avoid calamitous situations like this. And we also have the concept of apriya satya. Sometimes that also is necessary. Satyam bruya, priyam bruya, ma bruya satyam apriyam, priyam cha nanrutam bruya, yesa dharma sanatana. This is Manusmriti. So you see, we have in our scriptural tradition, cultural tradition, the ideas of applying ethical theory is somewhat of that. That is why Buddha pleaded for some moderation in the application of moral theories, so that it can be, common man can live up to this. Sometimes they may not be able to live up to this because of external factors, and in that case they would be punished or exonerated because of other things. But if you take the ethical theories in the absolute sense, then it will not be applicable to life, and it will frustrate the very spirit of ethics, which is to promote the good life or to live a successful life. So these are the ideas that tell us that we have not been always clinging to the spirit of these apparent ideas of universality, metaphysicality, and negativity is a different matter. Absolutism and metaphysicalism, this cannot be said to be the essence of or logically necessary features of our cultures or cultural tradition. So this kind of idea has to be done. So you see, then why our reason, the most important thing is our reason. Reason can play a very significant role in regulating our social psyche, so that we can use our cultural ideas or moral ideas for the benefit of the society. Now that can be done only if there are alternative paradigms, value paradigms, to weigh and balance. Now paradigm shift can occur, and they have occurred from time to time, and they have been influenced and have been reflected in our social psyche. Now that has to be done. Indian culture, the way I have tried to present it, Indian culture has copious stock of alternatives which can be rationally weighed and balanced, and proper decision can be taken. It has happened several times in our culture that some kind of um, moral value prevails for some time, and it also has some definite impact and influence on life, on social action, social behavior. In the epic period, we have had the Ramayana and also the Mahabharata. Rama continued to be the Maryada Purushottama, the ideal of morality, despite the questionable way in which he killed Bali. Despite the questionable way he killed Sambhuva. Why did he kill Sambhuva? Because he was doing something which was not his sadhana. He was practicing meditation. That was not supposed to be the swadharma of a Sudra. Now look at that. Similarly, he killed Bali. Yes, many people would agree that yes, Bali deserved to be killed. That is why Rama killed him. But why did he kill him? Did he, the way he killed Bali in a Chhara Yuddha, stealthily, hiding behind Sugriva, he shoot the arrow at Bali. Was it the proper way of punishing a guilty person? Now these are things are there. Despite these things, Rama continued to the Maryada Purusha. This kind of social psyche has been affected without reason. Coming to Krishna, Krishna also did something, certain things, and one most important thing I will point out, that within his knowledge, the valiant Karna, Shivaldas, had all the qualities of a Kshatriya. He was insulted, he was wrong, because it was not publicly known that he was a Kshatriya. But he was a Kshatriya as much as the other Pandavas were, the 5 Pandavas were. This Krishna knew. So within his knowledge, this something wrong had happened. Within his knowledge, Abhimanyu was killed. Abhimanyu was killed. The way he was killed, everybody knows. But that was, he took away Arjuna from the site of the war. And then there was nobody to protect Arjuna, protect Abhimanyu, when he was unjustly killed by 7 Rathis. So within his knowledge, these things happened, and still he was revered, he is revered as the paradigm of virtue, dharma, paradigm of dharma, virtue. Now, so paradigm shift has continued, has occurred, and has influenced, and has been reflected our social activities, social psyche, without much reason. On the other hand, if you emphasize the importance of materialism and practical approach to philosophy, that also will be not justified, that would be without reason. So always reason must play the dominant role in weighing and balancing the competing paradigms, and no particular paradigm, value paradigm, should be completely, the tendency to stick to one particular paradigm without reason must be also shunned, carefully shunned. So this is what our culture is. A rich repository of alternative paradigms. And with this, our copious stock of complete different paradigms, value paradigms, Indian culture is very rich. We have been insisting or emphasizing only one aspect of it. This other aspect which I have been talking about, Buddhism, Charvaka, or even the Sankhya pluralists and Vaisheshikas and Buddhism. This is the other face of our culture, which has not, which is as important as the general feature, the stereotype feature of metaphysicality, universality. This other feature also has something to teach us, and it is also a very important, as important a part of our culture as the other familiar feature. So that has to be coming to our Vedas. Nowhere the Vedas have told us that this world is something which is to be shunned. You have to go to the, leave this world and go to the forest or anywhere to meditate. Now, both Rigveda and Atharvaveda, they have not said anything like this. Rather, we have been told that the Vedic people have been longing for longer life in this world. Pasyema Sarada Satam, Jivema Sarada Satam. 100 years they wanted to live. In some of our Vedas, the idea of brahmachari is, after about that later, in our Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, King Janaka, Rishi Janaka, he was a Rajarsi, he has been mentioned with so much of adoration and veneration, and so often that it makes us evidently clear that one need not leave the world, leave the, his family and all that and go to meditate in the forest. That is not there. The idea of brahmachari has been mentioned in one verse of the Upanishad and one verse of the Rigveda and two verses of the Atharvaveda. But nowhere the idea of a sannyasin, recluse, has been mentioned. The idea of heaven also has been there, but this heaven is not the heaven of God, lived by gods, God or gods, but by it is a supposed world where the citizens live according to their own sweet will. Now these are the things which are there. Therefore, why should we say that pessimism, otherworldliness is the most important thing? So our insistence, perhaps one-sided insistence on moksha, renunciation, etc., have been perhaps done or overdone a bit. Indian culture, therefore, has to be understood in its proper perspective, where you have, and this culture is rich with alternative paradigms, where there are alternative paradigms to weigh and balance. Then that will give us a proper scope to deal with the situations in the best possible way. Indian culture, therefore, had to be understood in this way, carefully, different alternatives must be considered. Emphasis on one particular value paradigm should be carefully seen. Then only it will give us a proper understanding, proper interpretation of our culture. Not enveloped as spiritual, pessimistic, and otherworldly, but also as practical, humanistic, and life affirming, not life negative. The other day, I was talking about one life is enough uh, to you, where the I try to say that if you take this life seriously, then only there will be enough scope for you being moral. If you are given to understand that you can be, or even all the consequences of all your actions in this life, it is possible, then you will be careful, because you to talk about the other world, other that was invented in order that our own utilized consequences of the actions which we could not enjoy or suffer from in this life can be enjoyed or suffered from. Now, what is this idea? This idea is also the same. It is possible. So, if you are only going by the possibility, then the possibility that here in this world you can talk about, you can uh, suffer from or be rewarded for the good or bad or good consequences of your actions is enough would be enough incentive to be moral. Therefore, our culture, proper understanding of our culture must be reasonable and must not be taken as something to be accepted without reason and in a one-sided manner. Indian culture has this scope, and therefore Indian culture, it cannot be branded as pessimistic, spiritual, mystical, and so on. Thank you very much. Yes.
Hello. Hello.
Yes, yes.
Hello. Okay, thanks so much, sir, for your illuminating talk on the Indian culture. Sir, reflecting upon the schools of Indian philosophy and Indian scriptures like Mahabharata and Ramayana, you have cited the common and essential features of Indian culture, and you have also told how it has given emphasis to practical approach to life. It has taught us to be optimistic by following the ethical standards and different value paradigms. Sir, you have talked how our culture is rationally weighed and balanced. It has its own set of values, as you have said. The essential spirit of the culture has not taken any change. It has been reflected in terms of thought, conduct, and behavior of Indian life. In Vedic culture, you have also said how there is the longing for living 100 years because Indians were very optimistic in nature. You have also reflected upon it, and you have said also how Indian culture has preserved everything and discarded nothing. It makes our culture enriched, dynamic, and progressive. And you have also told how there needs to be proper understanding of Indian culture, not to be emphasized upon any particular value paradigms. Thank you so much, sir. Now, I would like to request Professor Dr. K. Omnaran Rao to present a brief synopsis on the talk of Professor P.K. Mohapatra, sir. Over to Professor K. Umnan Rao. Rao, sir. Rao, sir.
Namaskar, everybody. Namaskar, everybody. Giving me this opportunity to present a brief synopsis of the talk. Well, the synopsis was actually was to be provided by Dr. Pramod Kumar Das. Maybe due to some issue there, he had asked me to provide a brief synopsis. Beforehand, let me tell you, I had a network issue in my area, and to the best I could learn from Professor Mohapatra, I will try to briefly state this in few words. Well, he took a note of general characteristics of Indian philosophy. Whenever we come across a book on Indian philosophy, it is normally stated that Indian philosophy is spiritualistic, it is metaphysical, it is otherworldly. It has issues not related to this life. It is more or less pessimistic in nature. It is not optimistic. So there are certain issues which really might have hurted Professor Mohapatra. That's why in his lecture today, he has tried to take three elements from to look into what should be or what exactly is the feature of the Indian culture. He took into issue the feature of universality, then metaphysicality, and negativity. Now, taking these three things into account, now he tried to show that we have emphasized too much on these three issues, and we have taken things much in an absolute sense, which we should have not done that way. Now, while talking of universality and trying to say that Indian philosophy, is not that well, there is an element of universality, but that should not be generalized. He talks of you can talk of universality, but at the same time you should be very much careful about the context, about the situation. Even he was talking about truth telling, how truth telling cannot be even be taken as something that is universal. He was referring to Mahabharata, where he said there are 5 contexts where we cannot be truthful. We cannot speak the truth. So a sort of universality needs to be avoided, not because universality has a fault in it, but because universality applied in a strict sense carries certain issues, certain problems that we need to understand. So that is the main focus that he has tried to tell all of us that, well, you can talk of universality, but take into issue the element of context before applying something that is universal. Now, well, if you take say the example from Mahabharata itself, now see the Pancha Pandavas, the Pandava brothers, were much committed to the eldest brother Yudhishthira. So there was a dharma universally they took, that they should respect the ideas, the voice that is given by the eldest brother. But that is a dharma because they followed that universally, and they didn't look into the context. That's why they could not challenge their eldest brother, because they took that as a dharma in a universal sense and could not restrict the Draupadi Vastra Harana in the open court. And even we talk of Bhishma in the open court. What happened? Because he was committed to his pratigya, what is called as Bhishma pratigya, in a universal sense, even though he was not in favor of having a sort of discriminatory attitude to any female member in the society, and for Draupadi, a woman in the royal court, that sort of insult to a woman. Why that happened? Because we have taken certain issues in a universal sense, and that is what is to be restricted, given away, and we need to think of the context. Well, protect dharma, but at the same time need to be aware of the context. This is the issue which Professor Mohapatra has tried to say in this, and he talked of having importance to reason. So when it came to the metaphysical part, he said, well, people in the West think that Indian philosophy is too much metaphysical, and he openly challenged that, and he said, no, Indian philosophy is, well, there are elements which we can say, well, that may lead to metaphysics, but at the same time, he said Indian philosophy is an amalgamation of the material and the spiritual culture. Well, sometimes we may feel that too much of religiosity presupposes transcendence, but openly Professor Mahapatra has tried to say, tried to show that no, no, that sort of culture we don't have. We have importance to this life, and in his earlier talk was he said that this life is enough to get all the things that we want to. We are not sure about the other world. So why to focus too much on the other world? This life is enough, and whatever we want to do, that can be attended to, that can be done, and in this life itself. So there is no concern for metaphysics. There is no concern. There is no area to ponder too much on the transcendental features or the metaphysicality. So we have a life. We can make this life meaningful if we say, we see this life, we take this life in a moral sense, in a practical sense, and that leading a life of morality would solve the issues in hand, and that would not lead to transcendence, and that would not bring into issue the metaphysical whatever that lies beyond. We are not concerned too much about that. Well, there may be an area beyond this physical world, but that is not all. Even this material world has a sense. This material world has a meaning, and we need to give much importance to this life. That's how even the element of metaphysicality that was normally taken in a universal sense is obstructed, is criticized by Professor Mahapatra in saying that even this material life can be meaningful. Living in this material world, we can be spiritually oriented. We can transcend from the lower self to the higher self, and we can live a life very morally, very practically in this life. And you talked about the paradigm shifts in Indian culture, and that has happened a number of times. Now, well, I forgot one more thing. He gave importance to reason, and that was there. Why do we think of transcendence in Indian philosophy and culture? Refer to the past, refer to the ancient astronomy, ancient astrology, ancient medicine, ancient geometry. We have great names like Varamir, Aryabhatta, Bhaskaracharya. Are they metaphysical people? No, they have, well, they had a knowledge of the things around. They are more scientific, they are very much mathematical. So why do we say that Indian culture is metaphysically oriented? That is the misnomer to the Indian culture. Indian culture is a balanced one where it gives importance to this life, the affairs around, and at the same time, it makes a transition to the other world. And not that Indian culture is purely metaphysically oriented. Now, well, one thing that comes to my mind when he talks about the Indian philosophy and culture, one thing comes to my mind. Well, in Indian philosophy also, we talk of purusarthas, dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. Well, moksha is taken as the parama purusartha. That's why a sort of confusion arises that we give too much emphasis on moksha. But that emphasis is also somehow misguided. Why? Well, when we talk of moksha, many assume moksha is otherworldly. Moksha implies something which is transcendental. We have to go beyond. No, that is not the feature actually. Even in the Bhagavad Gita, we talk of Videha Mukti being given more importance. Jivan Mukti, even Bhagavad Gita, an importance is given to Jivan Mukti much over Videha Mukti, because it talks of Nishkama Karma. We can be a yogi, we can turn ourselves into a yogi, we can perfect our lives, and we can carry on an action selflessly for the welfare of the society. So we are much concerned about the society, well-being of the society, and in the process, whatever happens, let it happen. We don't know what is beyond. So even the ideal of Nishkama Karma that we find in Bhagavad Gita in the Hindu scriptures, this ideal says that we can lead a yogic life. We can lead we can lead a life of a karma sannyasi, wherein we think of the betterment of the world, and in the process, whatever is the outcome, we are not concerned. So that's how this life is affirming. Our activities are affirmative. They are not life negating. So that's how Professor Mohapatra has tried to bring about a balance of materialism and spiritualism in Indian culture. And he talked of various paradigm shifts that have occurred in the Indian culture, because and he said there are alternative features in the Indian culture, and we made a transition from one alternative to the other for the betterment of all concerned. So that's how we go away. We cannot say the Indian culture is totally universal, or the element of universality and transcendentality exist, or metaphysicality exists in Indian culture. Well, there is an element of universality, but at the same time, it has a concern for the context, it has a concern for the applicability part, which makes the universality element to be more practical and giving a scope to everything that is practically oriented. And that's how this life is meaningful, this life is assertive, and this life is not negating the way many people have a belief that this life is say the real life is something beyond. So that sort of metaphysics he has avoided, that sort of universality he has tried to break down. So he's going against the tradition. Rather, he's showing us the true face of our Indian culture, which was wrongly interpreted earlier. And again, he also talked of negativity. There are certain elements which have been, for describing reality, we take neti neti, we approach reality in the negative sense, and he talked of ahimsa, also a negative assertion. So actually, some sort of things have brought in as if there is some negative tendencies in Indian philosophy and culture, but righteously, Sarah said, now we have to be Indian philosophy is much positively oriented. It is ever open for change. It is a dynamic one. It is not static, and we have witnessed a number of paradigm shifts in our culture, and this keeps our culture moving and in a right direction. And that's how our culture is something unique, something unique, and something different from the Western culture, which is purely materialistic. But we have a blend of materialism and spiritualism. When I talk spiritualism, it is more or less in the words of Professor Mohapatra, it is more or less morality. We have a blend of materialism as well as a sense of morality, making our lives more complete and meaningful. And the element of universality that we talk of in Indian culture is not actually so. We are much aware of the context when the scriptures speak of the dharma, and at the same time, they also speak of knowing the context in applying the principles of dharma. That's how our culture is so unique, and we should not look into the Indian culture or Indian philosophy as something otherworldly, something metaphysical, or something spiritual, or something pessimistic. It is rather optimistic. It is not life negating, rather life affirming, and that's how our culture is a great culture. Thank you. Thanks everybody for making this webinar so beautiful. Well, I may be wrong somewhere. That can be corrected during the course of the interaction. Well, we have with us, this is what I have understood. I may be corrected, and some additions may be made so that we can have a good discussion on this topic. Well, I see many people here. Well, in the chat box, if I look into it, there are many questions,
may I ask one question?
Yes, yes, sir. Invited. Welcome, sir. Welcome, sir.
Okay, because Professor, I have to leave for some work.
Yes, sir. So, welcome, sir.
I must congratulate Professor Mohanty
because Professor Mohapatra.
For
Dr. Rao, Sir has left, so we should wait.
Sir, 1 minute, sir.
Sir has left.
Now, sir has joined. Well, sir, continue, sir.
Hello.
Professor,
continue?
Yes, sir. Continue, sir.
Yeah, so I must congratulate Professor for his brilliant talk and especially for his conclusion of not taking a single paradigm of Indian culture as it is being politically done these days, which is very, very much detrimental to our tradition, in which other competing paradigms are being incorporated into one single unitary view of Indian culture. So I am very much thankful for his conclusion. Another thing which I liked in his presentation was his emphasis on reason and context, which was very much emphasized by the later interpreter. Now, what I want to ask him is that though it is very difficult to define the concept of culture, there are hundreds of definitions, but there are two. One is very narrow and one is very broad. However, I am not going into that. Taking the very narrow view of culture, which he has taken, but is culture can be taken as identical to the philosophy of the nation or the society? Our culture must be taken something broader than this. Not only the view about the morality, also the institutions which are there to realize that morality. Whether there is some contradictions in the culture, that is also to be seen when we think about the reason. Why Buddhism came and why Buddhism was totally eclipsed from the Indian society, Indian history. This is also a very important question belonging to Indian culture. Are there not contradictions in our culture? Can we take Indian culture with various paradigms? How could it not develop modern science? Was there some inherent weakness in that in our culture? You have talked about the various stages of Indian culture. What are those stages? After Buddhism, what about Islamic? What about Britishers, colonial? And what about today? What is the state of Indian culture today? How are we dealing with the modernity, the values of equality, fraternity, and equality, fraternity, and liberty? Can we take our tradition and the values of modernity together, or is there some contradiction in that too? So how far our culture is able to change and adjust to the changing conditions? I am very much happy that he is not taking the very, you can say, the discovery view of culture when people think that there is something hidden in the long past which is only to be discovered. No, culture is like a river. The metaphor
Yeah,
of river is, I think, more important,
yeah,
and in which most of the influences come. And if it has got some life in its
yeah,
own, it is able to clear and clean
yeah.
itself. And with the very, very ongoing process, it is a historical view of culture. I think I must thank him for his brilliant talk. But his humanistic idea of culture must include the lack of scientific attitude, the prevalence of superstitions, the way our people, our leaders are behaving against the viruses, pandemics, and all these things. So, in the name of culture, sometimes they say that we have got all the medicines, all the knowledge in our Vedas. So this sort of the superstitious attitude that needs to be addressed, and for that we cannot glorify our culture. We have to see the contradictions, the problems, and the the way we have to learn from other cultures also. Thank you.
Over to Professor Mohapatra, if you want to make some comments on this. Over to Professor Mohapatra.
Sir has recently left. Will join soon.
Okay.
Shall I add something to what Professor
Yes,
Tandon
yes.
said?
Sir, you are welcome, sir. Namaskar, you are welcome.
Yes. So the thing is, culture is something which is socially transmitted. We are born into a culture, but the thing is, in Indian philosophy, we find the Vedic culture makes it a genetically transmitted thing. That means, take the case of sanskar or take the case of anything. That means Manu Samhita and Vedas, they have tried to prove the supremacy of certain the caste structure and all the systems of Indian ethics, the Varna, Asrama, Dharma, they are all based on the genetically structuring of culture. And that is why all these things could not help in the development of a scientific culture or in the rationalistic way of putting things before the person. Thank you.
Over to Professor Mohapatra, sir. Now, actually, sir might have listened to the comments made by Alok Tandon. He was very much thankful to you, sir, for your the new way of looking into the culture, the way you described that, and the later comments made by Professor Ghosh. I think you have listened to both of them. If you want to say something on this, if you want to assert something on this, kindly unmute and put forth your observations, sir. Your responses, sir. Kindly, we wish to have your responses, sir. Over to Professor Mohapatra, sir. Well, sir is there. Well, sir is there. Let us wait. Maybe some technical issue these days. Let us wait for a while. Maybe some issue with him. Let us wait for half a minute and let us move forward. Sir, are you able to hear me, sir? Professor Mohapatra, sir? Yes. Professor Mohapatra?
Dr. Rao. Dr. Rao.
Yes.
If sir is absent, please ask others if anybody has any response.
But in the meantime, if sir doesn't listen to that, well, what would that be of use? Because sir has to respond to that. Let us wait for half a minute. Sir might have listened to. Sir, Prafulla sir, are you there, sir? Hello. Yes, okay, because sir is not. So well, sir is not there. Well. In the meantime, well, somebody other may speak on this. We can put this before the speaker later on if he soon he joins. Well, anybody who wants to make a comment on this or make an observation, they are welcome. We have with us Dhaneswar Sahu sir, who is very active, and even Dhaneswar Sahu sir has left. And anybody who wants to make any sort of observation on this, they are welcome. Even Professor Mahanti is not there. Anybody, let us wait for.
Harish sir is there and Sachindra sir is there.
No,
Sachindra sir and Harish sir is there.
no, if they want, they can unmute themselves. If they want, they can unmute themselves. But we are waiting for Professor Mohapatra. Yes,
yes.
Namaskar. Yes, sir. Yes,
Namaskar.
sir.
Yes, I want to only add the view of Professor Jiten Mohanty in his book Culture, Theory and Practice. He says that culture is a sedimentation. It is a process, it's an ongoing process. I fully agree with Professor Tandon's view, and in India we accommodate so many things. That is my observation, and Professor Mohapatra has nicely pointed it out. I only want to add that culture is not static, not stagnation. It's a process, it is an ongoing process, and it is a sedimentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Well, sir has well, the observation that you have made, well, that has been said by Professor Mohapatra. Even Alok Chandan sir has reflected on that. Well, Professor Mohapatra has joined us. Now, sir, welcome back again, sir. Professor Mohapatra. Are you able to hear me, sir? Professor Mohapatra, sir. Professor Mohapatra, are you able to hear me, sir? Well, some network issue. Sir has joined, but he is not able to. Professor Mohapatra, sir, are you able to hear me, sir? Well, again, sir has left. Well, in the meantime, well, I have noted the point made by Professor Harish Sahu, sir, and maybe some other participant might be wanting to say something. In the meantime, they may unmute themselves and put forth their views so that we can manage the time. Anybody? Professor Sahu is there with us. Professor Dhaneshwar Sahu sir is there. If he wants, he can unmute and ask. We can wait for Professor Mohapatra to join. Dhaneshwar sir is there.
Am
Again,
I?
you're audible, sir. You're audible.
Am I? Hello.
Yes, yes, yes. Somebody is speaking and it is breaking. The voice is breaking.
Harish sir is speaking perhaps.
Acha, but sir, continue, sir. Sir, continue. Even Dhaneshwar Sahu has left. Now Prafulla sir has joined. Sir, now, sir, welcome back, sir. Sir, welcome back, sir. Prafulla sir, welcome back. Sir, are you able to hear me, sir? Professor Mohapatra, sir? Professor Mohapatra, sir?
No, sir, there is a network problem.
No, sir is there. Sir is there. Now, Dhaneshwar, sir, well, you are.
Am I audible?
Am
I audible?
No, sir. Yes, sir. Carry on, sir. Carry on.
Sir is there or he is not there?
He is there, but some network issue. But till the time you continue, sir. Maybe he's hearing you.
All right. Some ideas come to my mind while I was listening to him. First of all, I thank sir for his illuminating talk. But at the same time, some questions come to our mind. Should we distinguish between culture and philosophy? Philosophy is the product of some fertile minds, of some geniuses in a system, in a country, in a culture. But culture is how people live. Their lifestyle, their visions, their value systems, their attitudes. All these things taken collectively can form the idea of a culture. So we must distinguish between culture and philosophy. Philosophy is something static, as it is the contribution of some great minds. But culture is related with the lifestyle, the life vision, the life of the ordinary people. So this is one thing. Culture should be distinguished from philosophy. And then another thing is culture is something dynamic. Just as one of my previous commentators said, it is like a river. So culture is like a flow. But there is no idea that culture should be universal and culture should be static. And when we study a culture, we find that it has some good things. It has also many dark sides. And Indian culture has made significant contribution to world civilization. And at the same time, Indian culture has many black spots, many dark spots in it. Sir was telling about Buddhism. and he was saying that Buddhism stands for primacy of the ethical. But as also pointed out, Buddhism was discarded from this country. Not only that, most of the Buddhist monuments were destroyed. Under what circumstances Buddhism was discarded or Buddhist monuments were destroyed, that is a different question. But because Buddhism believes in a society which gives value to equality, which was not based on any caste or discrimination, perhaps Buddhism was destroyed from this country, apart from other regions. And then another thing comes to my mind, that why Indian mind, for thousands of years, India remained under the subjugation of others. Was there any India virtually before the British came? There are hundreds of kings ruling this country. Our languages are different. Our ideals are different. Lifestyles are different. This is another thing. It is after the British came, knowingly or unknowingly, for their political gain, they made this country a geographical unity. They made this country a political unity. So we now think of Indian civilization, Indian culture, Indian philosophy, but there is no India, perhaps before the British came, as we find it today. And as also pointed out, in India, there was a great development of science in the Buddhist period when Buddhism was prevalent. But after that, a dark age dawned, and there is no idea of a science. Our caste system, animal sacrifice, human sacrifice, untouchability, these are also, and women subjugation, these are all also the hard realities of Indian life. And it is only go to any village in India. In the pre-independent India, there are 7 lakhs villages. Go to any part of any village of India, there is a clear-cut discrimination between the touchables and the untouchables. Untouchables have suffered a lot. Now, untouchables, so-called the Sudras, the tribals, who constitute 90% of India's population, they have been neglected and they have not been taken care of by the so-called elites of this country. And these are perhaps some of the dark spots of our culture. And if we want to make a study of culture, my submission is, instead of going to philosophy, we must come to the life of people and how they have progressed, how they look at each other, to what extent they value equality, and to what extent they value human dignity. These are also some of the important points that we must take care of while discussing culture. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to put some of my views.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Now over to Professor Mohapatra. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Continue, sir. Sir,
I'm sorry about the technical problem. I could not listen to so many, quite a number of questions. But before Dhaneshwar, I'll come to Dhaneshwar. Before that, somebody else was saying something about Indian culture, and he appreciated my talk. But also he asked something about making philosophy, culture, something, ways, so that it can solve the problem of today's discriminations and all that. I really appreciate his. Sorry, I could not know his name.
Professor Alok Tandon. Professor Alok Tandon.
Alok Tandon. Thank you very much for your observation. Yes, and combining your discussion and Professor Dhaneshwar Sahu. Well, you see, culture, what I have been trying to point out, that culture is not something static. This was an accusation by others that Indian culture is static, that continues for years without any change. That is a wrong idea which I have been trying to refute. Culture is the refinement by training of the mental and intellectual powers of a nation, which shows in the uh, in the process of this development. So I like very imagery. The culture is like a river that goes on flowing. It never stops. It is never static. I appreciate that, and so no accusation about Indian culture being static and uh, remaining unchanged and continues like that for centuries. That is something which is outrightly rejected. Dhaneshwar, you talked about science. Okay, see, Buddhism. Uh, Buddhism was emphasizing on the primacy of the ethical. I'm not interested in better metaphysical things, not interested in the questions like the world after life and things like that. That is the only thing that it was a moral code of conduct, and that is what made this religion a major religion of the world. Your question is when you say that why Buddhism was, if it was emphasizing primacy of the ethical, why it was you know removed, driven away out of this country. And that is all the more reason that we have been sticking to very stereotypical idea, and Buddhist philosophy was a reformative philosophy, wanted to do away with all the um bad practices in Hinduism. That is why they could not be tolerated because the number of the Hindus were more. So they could not be tolerated. So that is no fault of the Buddhist. But it has made its mark. You see, there was discrimination. Discrimination among the different castes and classes. Stratification was there. Buddhists did not tolerate that. And there was the practice of sacrifice, animal sacrifice. That also is not was not tolerated by Buddha. So this is the scientific spirit. I mean, if you talk about this discrimination, he was against that, and that is why it was a reformation of the bad practices that was being followed by the Buddhists. So primacy of the ethical was there, and that was the essence of Buddhism. So I don't understand what was, why should you say that if it was, they emphasized the primacy of ethical, why they were ousted out of this country? They are not very connected. They are ousted because of other factors. As you rightly pointed out, so many stratifications, so many discriminations, and with Buddhist philosophy, tried to go against that, and these people could not tolerate it. So, what is important? And rightly you have said, culture is something which is not static. I have been also trying to say that it goes on changing, and it will. It has, and therefore that is why I presented the Indian culture as a rich storehouse of different paradigms, and that makes Indian culture more kind of important and also remarkable. Have I answered your question, Dhaneshwar?
Thank you, sir.
Dhaneshwar. Yes.
Thank you, sir, for your
Okay.
response.
Hello. Shall I repeat my question since
Yes,
Professor
sir.
Mohapatra was...
Yes, sir. Professor Bose.
yes.
Professor Bose. Welcome, sir. Welcome. Kindly, sir. Kindly.
Ranjit, ମୁଁ ଶୁଣିପାରିନଥିଲି କହ।
Sir, what I feel that Dhanesh sir's question remains very pertinent, that there is a distinction between philosophy and culture. Okay, culture, what happens in India, the problem starts with this, because the culture is generally a socially transmitted phenomenon. But in India, what happens, the Vedic culture puts it as if it is a genetically transmitted phenomenon. And for that reason, all these superstitions, all this narrow-mindedness, all these overriding caste systems, all these things, they are coming to the fore. So this is what this is my submission. And culture is the catalyst. In a multicultural society like India, culture definitely acts as a catalyst. But still, this thing, actually, they take the case of sanskara. Sanskara is something that means a man who is born into the Hindu society, he is taken for granted that he is acquired certain characteristics which is genetically, he has imbibed certain genetically imbibed qualities. So all these things are creating a problem for the philosophical reflection, because philosophy's intention is to is to liberate the human mind. And in order to liberate the human mind, all these drawbacks which we come across in the culture are to be taken care of. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I accept all that. Okay, that is all right. And only one thing I want to say: please be. Let us not think that philosophy and culture are totally different. I think philosophy is a part of the culture. Somebody asked me one day, is philosophy a culture? Philosophy is a part of the culture. You see, if you consider or discuss culture, you have to take the philosophical theories or philosophical beliefs in that, along with that also. That is why I had cited the cases of some philosophical systems which go in the other way, in a different way than the stereotypical general impression. Okay.
Thank you, sir, for your response. And taking to the question by Professor Dharmeshwar Sahu, sir, well, we cannot take culture in a piecemeal. Well, Professor Mohapatra said, well, philosophy is reflected in our culture. Well, we cannot talk of a culture without having the philosophy of its own. So somehow philosophy is reflected in our very attitude towards our life, the way we live. The philosophy is reflected directly or indirectly. That's how we have to take our, in that sense, we need to take our philosophy and our culture together. Now, the last question, sir, well, this nearly 8. The last question that we have is by Sachindra Rao, sir. He says, India is a country with a lot of diversity, with a lot of groups, with a lot of ethnic groups, with a lot of cultures, with a lot of traditions. So taking this, the diversity of the belief patterns, the diversity in the thought patterns, the diversity in the cultures, in the traditions, how do you define culture in a broader sense, taking the Indian perspective into account? What is Professor Mahapatra?
Ask this question again.
Sir, actually,
Satindra?
yes, Sachi Rawla sir says India is a country with a lot of diversities. They have we have number of groups, number of ethnic groups. We have regions with different cultures. The traditions are different. The practices are different. But still, we are somehow united together by a sort of a thread of unity. Now, he wants to see, even despite these diversities, how do you define culture in a broader perspective, taking all these features so that we can have a new, say, sort of definition, a general definition for the Indian culture?
Yes, that is precisely what I have been discussing.
Yes.
There is nothing which is only one way of looking at culture. culture has different aspects, and I have highlighted the different aspects of this culture. And I have argued that culture should not be taken only in one sense. The other side of the culture, all the different aspects of the culture must be taken together and weighed and balanced. And that is the beauty of our culture of unity in diversity. So diversity has to be taken into account. And then out of that you can try to find out a unified picture. I have been discussing that. Okay. Hello?
Hello, Dr. Rao.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you. Now there are no more questions. Well, there is a question by Ravindra Pradhan. Well, I have tried to answer this because that was a part of your lecture and that was accounted also. I have answered that question in the chat box on your behalf. Please don't, because of the paucity of time. Now over to Dr. Kailash Maharana for the final close down.
No, actually we are back by time. Kindly propose vote of thanks to Professor P.K. Mohapatra and the other participants.
Thank you very much, sir. At first, I would like to thank Professor Mohapatra, sir, for his very nice lecture. Nice in the sense it is innovative, like the way his earlier lecture was. It was one life is enough. So he has brought into issue that this life is sufficient for doing materializing a number of things that we think of. There is no need for thinking of life and all that. In the same way, he has broken the tradition even today in his lecture, wherein he tried to break the traditional attempts that we see in the philosophy books, that Indian philosophy and culture is otherworldly, transcendental, metaphysical, it is pessimistic, all this. So Sir has tried to negate all this, and he has tried to show that element of universality that we talk of, the element of metaphysicality that we talk of, the element of negativity that we talk of, well, they should not be addressed in a strict sense. We have a golden mean in all this. He has taken all the three issues and has tried to show how our culture has both materialism as well as morality, or say spiritualism, taken so nicely, blended so nicely that we have the frameworks, we have the rules, we have the norms, but at the same time we know the context, we know the situations, we know the technique of their application, and for doing so we have come across a number of paradigm shifts in our lives, wherein pointing to Professor Tandon, where he said now our culture is not static, it is dynamic, it is like a flowing river, and every time it is liable for a change. So that's how our culture is open, and even Professor Mohapatra has said that we are open for many alternatives in our culture. That's how our culture is so fluid, so dynamic. It is not fixed. We are open for change every time we think of so. So that's how our culture is something not fixed to a particular pattern. We can have a pattern, but at the same time we are free to be free from the pattern to in our culture. That's how Professor Mohapatra has tried to show. No, it is our culture is not purely universalistic, or say purely it's metaphysical. Well, elements of metaphysics might be there. Element of universality might be there, but it cannot be taken so generally, so universally. We have a golden mean wherein this life, in this life, we can account for a number of things. We don't think too much about the other world. Well, there are certain things which are taken in a negative sense. Well, we emphasize to be otherworldly, so it's not so exactly so. You have Saras tried to show that even the idea of liberation can be, or liberation can be attained while being in life. So there is a possibility of a jivan mukti. So we should try for that. What is there beyond us? Why should we ponder too much over that? So that's a great take from his lecture, that we need to be very much concerned about this life, and that's how he has tried to negate the elements of universality and metaphysicality and negativity that we often speak of to be very much attached to the Indian culture. That's how he said there are many paradigm shifts in our culture, and it is open for every paradigm